please like our video and subscribe to RotoWire. Then go to rotowire.com/pod for a free 10-day trial.
Welcome to the RotoWire Prospect Podcast. I'm Clay Link, here with RotoWire.com's lead prospect analyst, James Anderson. Great to be talking with you again, James. We got quite a bit to get to. We'll eventually get around to your 148 AL Central prospects you need to know from your latest Farm Futures. But I thought we'd spend some time talking about the Great Fantasy Baseball Invitational. Those drafts underway, moving along at a snail's pace in most instances. That's all right. Let's hear your team, though, so far, James. I'm pretty excited because I don't think, you maybe shared a few picks with me, but I have not heard your full team. So what do you got?
Well, yeah, someone just timed out in mine and got auto picked. So, I mean, I think
That's
on
brutal.
paper it's the league of death, but it's the league of death in terms of just waiting for your turn to pick as well.
The league of wanting death, accepting death.
Yeah. So I went Shane Bieber, Brandon Woodruff.
And from the, was it from the 10 hole?
Yeah, let me pull up my draft board here.
Sorry, I thought it was 10 or 12 or something.
Yeah, 10. So Bieber, Woodruff, Tim Anderson, Vlad, Jose Altuve, Nelson Cruz.
Very nice. I'm picking from the 11th. So far I've got Yelich, Darvish, Xander Bogaerts, who I'm a little nervous about now with his health, George Springer, Zach Pleaseak, Nick Castellanos, Altuve, who I know you got in your Beat James Anderson league, right? And then Brad Hand, and then Chris Bryant. I was hoping one of Sandy or Sixto would come back to me, but then those guys just went on at the turn, so I'm 3 picks away now. I need to add that third starter, so options drying up a little bit. I mean, I used to like Julio Urias, but now, maybe he ends up in the bullpen, so I'm going to have to get creative. I have to say, though, I haven't had any timeouts, but just get it together, guys. I mean, just make your pick. This is not a game of, I'm going to be on the clock at the right time, or I'm going to, it's not a game of clock luck or something. Just beat me in fantasy baseball. Don't make me go crazy here. But for the most part, our draft's moving along okay. One guy's intent on keeping his average pick time over an hour through 9 rounds. He shall remain nameless. But there is a draft etiquette that I think people should abide by.
I mean, your draft's going faster than mine, man. We're not even halfway through the 7th round.
I was actually looking at all the publicly available boards because I thought mine was moving so slow. And we are probably one of the faster moving ones. It's hard to believe, but I get, it's only 30 rounds and we got plenty of time before opening day. But, and maybe those people who just drafted Framber Valdez may want to use up their full clock for their next pick. That's pretty brutal. I want to say before we get into prospect stuff, I did get to see Hunter Green last night. Pretty ugly outing. You did touch like 103, but hung a breaking pitch to Jose Iglesias, which Iglesias just crushed. The Reds had to call it after 2 outs just because the pitch count was getting up there. It seems like he's pretty far ways off, and I'm pulling for the kid, but honestly, it looked like bullpen all the way last night.
Yeah, I mean, that someone hit me up on Twitter about, like, are you concerned? And it's just like, that's kind of what I expected. I mean, that's kind of the book on him right now, is it's just velocity, no movement. Secondaries need a ton of work. So tough guy to rank. I got him ranked 150 right now. Could see a case for him being lower than that. I don't really see a case for him being much higher than that. And I'm pulling for him for sure. I mean, he was just a really, really special arm, but there's a reason why prep righties never go 1-1. I mean, he was probably the closest to going 1-1 from that subset since I've been doing this, and still didn't happen just because so much can go wrong.
Yeah, he got the pitching ninja treatment after one of those heaters, and the heater's great. But I saw somebody, quote retweet that the pitching ninja thing. Was like, oh man, I'm all in. It's like, did you see any other pitch he threw in that outing? Because it was not pretty at all. I mean, Yeah, when Jose Iglesias squares up a breaking pitch right over the middle of the plate and hammers it for a homer. Not great. James, tell us a little bit about the Beat James Anderson League. Was that last night?
Yeah.
Part of the RotoWire Online Championship, of course.
That was a ton of fun. I wanted to try a strategy that I know Chris Liss employed in a draft a few days ago, and something that I'd been kind of thinking about trying just because, there's more than one way to skin a cat, and I always sort of find myself, I'll get my two aces early, and I'll find myself just passing on a bunch of pitchers that I love, kind of in that 90 to 150 range. And I just wanted to see what kind of team could I put together if I didn't take the early aces and just sort of pounded the pitchers in that kind of 90 to 150 range. Obviously, the key to that whole strategy is you definitely have to hit on those pitchers. But I started off with 5 hitters: Jose Ramirez, Bryce Harper, Corey Seager, Marcell Ozuna, Trent Grisham. This is from the 9-hole in a 12-team league. And then the other 2 hitters that were sort of part of this plan were Jose Altuve and Dansby Swanson. But I played chicken with the ADP because I felt like I might still be able to get those guys if I waited around and took a pitcher there. And I took Zach Pleaseak, who I had been wanting. He's kind of one of the guys that I've just been wanting to get in on, but it just never made sense for me to take him as my SP3. So I'd just been passing on him. And I kind of like this. I kind of like him sort of anchoring this strategy, because if he does sort of blow up and become like a top 10, top 15 starter, then I'm getting that ace there. And I got 5 hitters in front of him. So I went Pleaseak in the 6th, Altuve in the 7th, Swanson in the 8th. And then I took 6 pitchers in a row: Rosenthal, Kimbrel, Bundy, Pablo Lopez, Alex Colomé, Mike Soroka. Also got Aaron Savali, Herman Marquez, Yusei Kikuchi, Ryan Yarbrough, Cal Quantrill. So
that's pretty awesome.
A lot of the guys that I've been, a lot of my favorite starting pitchers, really. And so it's kind of about can Zach Plesac and Dylan Bundy and Pablo Lopez and Mike Soroka, and can those guys give me enough production on the pitching side? Because I do think I've got a really nice offensive setup. Might be a tiny bit light in stolen bases, but I think I'm pretty well set up everywhere else. So just wanted to give that strategy a try. We'll see how it works out, but I think it came together about as good as I could have hoped.
That's awesome. I heard Chris talking about, and maybe I was just reading his recap, but he mentioned that plan was kind of birthed from the idea of, or just from the news, that Major League Baseball will be deadening the ball, and that more pitchers that will help you will be more freely available. Of course, the streaming the past few years with the juice ball has been, dangerous waters, because you just don't know what you're going to get. Is that kind of what you were thinking too? You'll just be able to stream more, and some of those guys you took late, maybe better bets to pan out because of the juice ball. Was that on your mind? De-juice ball?
Yeah, mine was less about the deadening of the ball. I know that's part of why Chris did that, but mine was more just I think I can hit on some of these mid-round starters, juice ball or no juice ball. I think I can hit on 2 or 3 of these guys and get top 20 production from them in that spot. And that allows me to, because I do think there's just a really juicy pocket of starting pitchers there in rounds, 9 through 14, 9 through 15. And if you hit on that's kind of when you had your monster year a couple of years ago, you hit on a few starting pitchers in that range that ended up returning SP1 production. And when you do that, and you went hitter early, then I think it really sets you up for a nice season. And that was kind of more my thinking is like, of course I love the pitchers that I love at the top, but I also like these guys. So I wanted to sort of see what happened if I didn't have to pass on those guys in that range and just needed to hit as many of them as I could, and just kind of try it that way. So it really didn't have much to do with the juice ball for me.
Just a confidence that you're gonna uncover some gems, yeah.
And if anything, it may be, I think the other way around, like the juice ball. If the juice ball is gone, then you want as many of those stud mashers as you can who aren't going to be devalued by the lack of the juice ball. So, being able to get multiple guys like Bryce Harper and Marcell Ozuna who just are going to hit their homers no matter what ball we're using, I think there's some value to that as well.
Absolutely. So you've mentioned, Sandy Alcantara, Pablo Lopez, guys you like in that range. Who else do you like in that 9 to 14 range that you're talking about? We talked about Kikuchi. You mentioned you drafted him. Anybody else you want to maybe give away? Because I'm coming up on the clock here, and I don't know who I'm going to pick.
Yeah, I mean, if someone wants to take the time to listen to this podcast to figure out who I like, then that's fine. I don't mind giving that away. Even though I am hoping to get as many of these guys as possible in
TGFBI. You don't have to, James.
No, I don't mind. So yeah, I mean the Sandy Alcantara, Dylan Bundy, Pablo Lopez, Kevin Gausman, Lance McCullers, Charlie Morton. I mean those are kind of I want to get like 3 of them if I can. In that strategy, like I really think. Like Alcantara, Bundy, Lopez, Gausman, McCullers, Morton.
I like
Savali a little later. I mean, like those are the guys that I think can actually finish as top 25 starters. I don't really think Savali can, but I think he's a nice sort of like SP4, SP5 in this strategy. Mm-hmm. And then I got Marquez as my SP6, and I'm just going to sit him at home pretty much whenever I can because I don't need to. I'm not relying on him, right? Like I didn't take him as my SP3. I took him as my SP6, so I'm just going to start him on the road. So yeah, I mean, I think those are the guys. And I don't mind if Kyle Hendricks is my SP1 or Zach Pleaseak's my SP1. I'm totally fine with that as well. So yeah, I still haven't gotten McCullers anywhere. Still haven't gotten Gausman anywhere. But definitely been peppering the Marlins guys and Dylan Bundy in that range.
Very nice. Well, I wish you luck. I know in the TGFBI you're, I think, number 2 in the three-year historical rankings, and you've mentioned that in that league, 15 teams, you kind of do like to get a couple of aces early, but you're trying out this new approach in the 15s. I like it. The 12s. I mean,
I tried this one in the 12.
The 12, right? Yeah. Sorry.
Definitely didn't do this in TGFBI going pitcher there, but
it's definitely a different animal. But do you see yourself? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, the big difference to me is just in a 12, you definitely are going to be able to stream guys.
Yeah, true.
You can't stream guys in a 15, really.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So it's kind of more viable to me in a 12.
Yeah. So do you see yourself in future 12s doing this pretty regularly, or was this kind of a one-off?
I don't know if I actually have any more 12s coming up, but it went well enough that I would try it again for sure. Mm-hmm. It's not something where like 15 rounds in, I was like, oh man, this was a mess. I don't want to do this again. Like I actually really liked it.
And like you said, like if you hit on 1 or 2 of those SPs, you're going to be in a really good spot because your offense is going to be so dominant. Bully hitting, manage pitching is what Todd Zola always says. Good luck in that league, James. Of course, there is an overall. My Beat Clay Link league is tomorrow, Thursday. And I think there's still a few spots left. So if you want to take a shot at that $125,000 overall prize, we'd love to have you. You also get a 3-month RotoWire subscription if you finish ahead of me, which is unlikely, granted. But anything else on your mind as far as these drafts go, James?
Well, I think I did 3 drafts yesterday, or I did TGFBI, Tout Wars Draft and Hold, and the Beat James Anderson League all within the last couple of days, and I'm 3 for 3 on Altuve shares.
Oh, baby. You
So-
know, I was pretty happy to get him in TGFBI. I was actually one pick away from pairing him up with Dansby in the 15, but Howard Bender, after taking up all of his clock, no, I'm kidding, Howard, but he took him right before me, so that I went Brad Hand. I was really hoping to get that Altuve-Swanson combo, but Altuve, I do feel like he's slipping. I know Jeff Erickson doesn't really like him much anymore. He questions how much he's going to run, which is a reasonable question, but I just think the track record's too good to pass up. 7th round pick in a 15. I mean, this guy was going number 2 overall like 3 years ago.
Yeah, I really trust him to have put in just a heck of an off season. Like, I mean, they're all prideful guys, but I mean, like you said, this was a top 3 overall pick for a while, and he's still like 31. I believe. I could be wrong about that, but I mean, I just don't think he's done. I don't think he's washed up, and he's going to be hitting really high in a really good lineup. And like I would take Ozzie Albies over Jose Altuve, but I don't really think the production's going to be that different this year between those two.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, this track record is just off the charts, and it's not like this guy was this good for this long just because he was, they were banging trash cans. I mean, that's just silly to think. And, 219 average during the season, he turned it on the postseason and was off the charts. I also do think, he's created a little distance from those knee issues. Only 8 stolen bases over the past 2 years, but I think this is a guy who kind of wants to run, and I think kind of wants to prove himself again. And he's actually only 30 years old. Doesn't turn 31 until May 6th, so younger than Whit Merrifield. James.
Yeah, I mean that's another guy. I mean, like I would like Ozzie Albies. I like Whit Merrifield. I like Jose Altuve. I just don't think there should be like a 4-round gap between those first 2 and Altuve.
Yeah, all those guys you mentioned essentially, Gausman, Bundy, Alcantara, Sixto, all went since I took Chris Bryant. I should have probably taken one over Bryant in this TGFBI draft, but I just couldn't let Bryant slip past the 9th round. Now I'll have to get creative on the pitching side with only 2 starters, 1 closer. In your Beat James Anderson, you said you took Rosenthal, Kimbrel, right?
And Colomé.
And Colomé. Okay, I like that. Did you take any flyers late? Like any?
No, that was kind of the whole point. It was just 3 relievers early, and then I was just done there and got a bunch of the starting pitchers and hitters I wanted late.
Nice. Yeah, I know Todd Zolo, when we were talking on the podcast on Friday a couple weeks back, after Rosenthal signed, I was like, does this make Rosenthal a top 10 closer? He's like, no, top 5. And I was really hoping to get Rosenthal, but when Todd Zola speaks, the people listen, and the market is adjusting. But Rosenthal for a while was a great pick.
You definitely can't use I think most people know not to draft off ADP, but you have to go get Rosenthal in your queue, and you have to take him around pick 100 if you want him. Like, you can't, like, I know his ADP is still like 140s or whatever it is on the NFBC draft software, but you have to take him around pick 100.
Let me ask you about a choice I just made, because I mentioned I drafted Chris Bryant. Ke'Bryan Hayes was still on the board. I know the projections are a little middling. I like Ke'Bryan Hayes. What do you think? Did I make the right choice there with Bryant over Hayes at third base?
Yeah, I mean, the only reason I would go Hayes over Bryant is if I needed help in stolen bases. Like, more, I mean, you always need help there, but like, if you're just really lacking, then I think you go Hayes. But if you've kind of covered your bases best to your ability at that point, I think Bryant, it would be so Chris Bryant to me to have a monster year in his walk year, sign like a big contract, and then have a terrible year next year. Like, I think that's what we're all going to be in for.
It seems like a lock to happen. A real quick note before we move on. From our friends over at AutoNew. AutoNew Fantasy Baseball is the next level fantasy baseball challenge you've been looking for. Experience a year-round dynasty competition with deep rosters. Accumulate prospects to lead your team in the future or to move for a superstar at the trade deadline. Keep your baseball mind engaged in the offseason with trades and arbitration. Learn more about why everyone who plays Ottoneu becomes addicted at ottoneubaseball.com. That's OTTONEU baseball.com. Ottoneu, better fantasy baseball. I have no idea what just made me think of it, but did you know that Shaq is in a wrestling match tonight, James? On AEW Wrestling.
I did
It's
not
going to
know
be
that.
just amazing. He's going to get himself hurt. He's going to tear a hamstring just getting in the ring, I think. I do love TGFBI, and thanks to Justin Mason. When I complain about people drafting, I hope Justin knows that I'm just kind of having fun and I'm not really mad about these things. But just out of the generosity, just out of the kindness of your heart, speed it up, people. I want to make some more picks. I'm anxious, but no, I'm having fun with this. But the slow drafts can be like painful when you're sitting at home for 3 hours just staring at the screen.
Well, I think they're more painful for you and I probably than most people, just because like we're sitting at our screens looking at baseball like all day long.
Yeah.
And so like if I had a real job and was just in like meetings all day and stuff, I wouldn't be as bothered by it. But it's just like you have that window open on the side. You're just like, am I up yet? Oh, it's still on the guy that it was on an hour and a half.
Yeah. Cool. It's like I could have done something with my night. Like it's on me, I guess. But like last night I was, I had the Reds game on, first televised Reds game. I was enjoying it. Aside from Hunter Green looking pretty rocky, but after a couple hours go by, I'm like, this guy's still on the clock. I need to just close the laptop and do something else. But yeah, some of the people who have real jobs, I realize that it's things get in the way, life gets in the way. But I'm going to continue to shame people on Twitter, James. I'll bully them into making their pick. I'm kidding, but
just gotta rattle them. Just get in their heads and rattle them into making some bad picks.
Actually, when I said something about like on Twitter yesterday about unfollowing all the people that were taking forever, a couple of people DM'd me were like, "Sorry, I'll pick it up." I was like, "Dude, I was kidding." But yeah, I mean, at the same time, I do want to pressure them to pick in a timely manner, so I didn't want to completely give it away that I was just joking. All right, James. Farm Futures, 148 AL Central prospects you need to know. Looking forward to diving into this because we are off this Friday on Farm Friday. You are off, so we'll not get to talk to you there. So, looking forward to breaking this down. And then you will be back from your little mini vacation as we do some activities together for First Pitch Florida. I'm looking forward to that. So tune in this weekend if you want to talk about that. James and I, again, off on Farm Friday, but we'll talk about these AL Central prospects you need to know. And Andrew Vaughn, no shocker, leading off the White Sox, making a lot of noise, and it sounds like he's going to be a guy with helium. We're sharing a main event. I feel like come draft time in the main event, he could be going inside the top 200.
Well, I happened to take him inside the top 200 in the B. James Anderson League last night.
I love it. Is that did you set a new high, max or min pick?
Here, what? Can you look up what his min pick is?
Yeah,
I'll
I'm
look
doing
up
that right now.
I took him.
I'm looking that up right now.
That was one of those where I was on the clock and I just didn't feel great about any of the options, and so it's just like, all right, it's Andrew Vaughn time, and I know I can get like some boring first baseman later. I ended up with Heimer Candelario.
I like him. I mean, that's great.
Yeah. So
his min. Vaughn. Let me say the min first. All right, 180. Was that set by you?
So I took him. This is awesome radio.
You good? We're just hanging out.
I took him at 184.
Okay, so not quite the min, but very close.
Not quite.
I'm exactly with you, though. There gets a point in the draft around 150, 180, where the player pool kind of just becomes a wash. Like the margins between each player are very thin, so chase some upside.
Like anyone I would have taken there was like a decent chance they were going to be available with my next pick or even like a couple picks later.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew Andrew Vaughn wasn't going to be around much longer. And then, 12-teamer, if I have to start Heimer Candelario for a little bit. That's not a bad problem at all. So yeah, I thought it made sense. I mean, that bomb he hit the other day was really impressive. Obviously, he's. I mean, they've kind of made a point of their depth chart not doing anything to block him. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I think it's trending in that direction for sure. I don't know if they're gonna come to some sort of long-term extension or maybe just break with him. Like I honestly wouldn't be surprised if they broke camp with him, even if they didn't have an extension, because especially with there being no AAA season starting until May, like
that's a pain.
What could you possibly show the team at the alt site for 2 weeks for them to be like, okay, now you're ready. Now that you beat up on our terrible pitchers who couldn't break the 26-man roster, now we know you're ready.
Now we've seen enough. Yeah, it's pretty fascinating. In that delayed AAA season, we just got that news officially yesterday by at least a month, right? So, I mean, I've seen some people speculating that maybe that affects Jared Kelenic and some others, and maybe it could, but because they use that excuse, working on your defense at AAA and all that. But do you see that affecting some of the top guys?
I think it's a good thing for Kelenic and Vaughn. Vaughn especially, like the White Sox. I just wrote an article that went up earlier today with some best bets on American League over/under win totals, and the White Sox have a higher over/under than the Twins do. I still think the Twins win that division, but I mean, this is a team with World Series aspirations this year. So, like, are you gonna leave your clear best designated hitter at the alt side for a couple of weeks? And I mean, that division could come down to like a game or two. So, I mean, I think it's really good for Vaughn. Kelenic, like, it's a different situation because the Mariners, I mean, I know they've made some semi-win now moves, but they're not really a threat in that division. So it's more about, like, I wonder, I mean, I'm probably giving Rob Manfred way too much credit here by even suggesting it, but like, I wonder if the commissioner's office, like, kind of has a talk with Seattle and it's just like, look, like, that was embarrassing what happened a couple weeks ago. Like, it's just going to be, people are going to talk about this for multiple weeks if you send him down, and kind of as punishment for how embarrassing that was and for potential money you might have cost the rest of the teams by that getting leaked to the public. Like, you're just going to have to break camp with this guy. Like, I mean, that's probably way too sensible and everything for it to actually come from the commissioner's office. But I mean, I don't know. I think it would be kind of a circus if they sent Kelenic down to the alt site for a couple of weeks. Like, that just would be so transparent
about it.
Yeah, I mean, do you want one of the future faces of your franchise to just hate the entire organization? Like,
and talk
is that
crap
what you're
about
going
it
for?
publicly when they get sent down? Yeah. That's insane. I hope to see him right off the bat. I think he'll probably deserve to be there. I mean, if he plays anything like he was playing last spring, I mean, he's gonna force their hand, I think. And yeah, just that whole Kevin Mather nonsense was just insane.
Hey, really quickly before we get to the AL Central, did you see the jack that your boy Wander Franco hit today?
I did see that. I actually saw him yesterday, and he kind of had like a lazy pop out, and I was, didn't see anything noteworthy. But yeah, I saw that one today.
Are you going to get back in?
Maybe I'll have to. I love to overreact to one spring homer. So, no, I could see it. He's kind of like with Vaughn and Kelenic, he's kind of becoming a little bit of an afterthought, which is insane.
Well, I think it's there's
just too crowded.
Like if they traded Willy Adames to your Reds today, I think you'd see Wander Franco's ADP go up like by 100 plus picks. Mm-hmm. I think people probably just kind of, and I think rightfully so. I think you look at the depth chart, and it's just like, well, like who's now going to have to sit so that Wander Franco can play almost every day? I don't know. it's tough to figure out at this point.
Who was that other guy that you and Jason Collette mentioned on that team who could maybe move around and play short?
Taylor Walls.
Yeah. So you don't think, obviously he's not like a long-term obstacle for Franco.
I mean, Walls is kind of a, just a classic Rays guy. Like he's kind of Joey Wendell, like Brandon Lau before Brandon Lau blew up. Just, move him around all over the place, play him like 3-4 days a week. Like he's the type of guy you promote even if you don't have regular playing time for him. But it's hard for me to imagine them bringing up Wander Franco to only play like 3 or 4 days a week.
Yeah, now you're talking me into getting back on board. Maybe I'll pop him here in the 9th round. No, I won't do that. But we're already getting to the point in TGFBI where things are in the player pool kind of bleeding together, and things, a guy who I might want to hear, like, I have Kikuchi really high on my board, and guys like Chris Bassett pretty high, Gio Urshela, but maybe it's time where I, in pursuit of that overall, start chasing some of these prospects. We'll have to see. It's always stashing season around here, James. By the way, when we share that main team, if the price on Vaughn is still around 180, can we get another share, you think? Can I talk you into
that? Of course, man. Of course.
Right, cool. Sounds good. So anybody else here in this White Sox system? You wrote up 148 prospects for this article, only 20 from this White Sox system. Anybody else you want to talk about, or should we move on to Cleveland?
It's just an extremely top-heavy system. I mean, it's bizarre how bad they are at hitting on guys sort of in the middle to late rounds of the draft. But yeah, I mean, everyone kind of knows the top guys in that system, so we can move on.
So while only 20 White Sox you need to know, 48 Cleveland players you wrote up for this week. Tyler Freeman headlines the system here for you, followed by George Valera. Now, Valera, we haven't seen much of him in pro ball, and it seemed like last year maybe his stock was slipping a little bit, not just with you, but in the entire prospect community. Obviously not ready to give up on him, and you have him pretty highly ranked, even ahead of a guy like Tristan Mckenzie, who we've already seen. But you think Valera's skill set's gonna translate, and as he moves up the ladder, he's gonna encounter little resistance.
I just think it was a really positive year for him, 2020, which I think last year was a rough year for certain prospects, missing that really valuable developmental time. But I think he might have gotten more done at the alt site, working with their best instructors and best coaches in a controlled environment than if he had been at like low A all year. It seemed to me like he maybe developed some bad habits when he was in short season ball, and he was, kind of always like when he first signed and like everything, it was kind of, this guy could have a plus hit tool and, maybe average or better power. Well, now he's got plus raw power, and I think he started falling in love with hitting the ball out of the park in the New York Penn League. So I think it was great for him to just get at that alt site and really sort of focus on like, let's sort of develop that approach a little bit more. Let's kind of take what the pitchers give you. The power is going to be there. You don't have to worry about trying to get to that too much in a conscious way. Just I think it was a big year for him, and he's a left fielder kind of all the way. So it's, he's going to have to hit, but I think he's going to do it. I think he could be a guy that finishes the year inside the top 15.
It's really good to know, because obviously we don't have minor league games to go off of last year, and most people, they probably didn't see whatever you saw about Valera's alt site showing, but you've been digging around a lot for our magazine. You put in countless hours to research this, and so it's good to hear that everything was looking better for Valera at that alt site. Maybe he was cleaning up some of those bad habits. Tristan Mckenzie I mentioned, and I was listening to Rates and Barrels recently, and I was a little surprised to hear Eno say that he was pretty on Tristan Mckenzie for this year. Good to know, because I am going to be competing against Eno in AL Labor this weekend, so I'll push him up just to make Eno mad. But I actually don't really have much interest in Mckenzie for 2021. Looked really good, but I do worry about him holding up, how many innings we're going to get. What about you on Mckenzie? Do you see yourself drafting him for this season?
No, not at all. I'm just really worried about the durability. I mean, and just like how many innings do we even think they're going to allow him to throw in the majors this year? Like, it's just to expect him to even get to like 100 innings in the rotation to me is kind of a stretch just based on what he's done these last 3 years. And I mean, that guy's probably got like a 28 waist. Like it's not a starter's build at all. That doesn't mean that he can't um, defy the odds and make it work like over the course of his career. I just don't think this is that year where he proves to us that he's like a 150 plus inning pitcher. I think next year they'll probably let him push up past like 120, 130 innings and just sort of see how far he can go. But I just don't think that's this year. And they have so much rotation depth. I mean, they keep trading guys away, but they just have so many more guys coming that there's always somebody else that they can bring up and have step into that role. So I mean, at cost, I've said this all draft season, but at cost, I'd rather take Cal Quantrill at pick like 300 than Tristan McKenzie at pick 180. Mm-hmm. Even though I mean, like Cal Quantrill's not even a lock to make that rotation. I just think he is going to perform if he does make it, and the draft capital it takes to get him. Like if you blow that pick, it's not the end of the world. I mean, I just if you take a guy at pick 180 and you only get like 14 starts out of him, 12 starts out of him, that doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I've got about a 60 spot gap between ADP and where I have him. I have him 243 McKenzie on my top 300. Yeah, I mean, I like the skills, but I just, for this year, I'm not going to be in on him. And maybe he spends some time at the alt side or AAA too. It should not be ruled out. Him and Savali right back to back in ADP. That's kind of interesting. I'd rather have Savali by a fair amount. But
oh yeah,
whenever Eno says, that caught my attention. Whenever he likes a guy. Of course, my ears are going to peak up a little bit. Right behind him in this Cleveland system, James, Nolan Jones and Brian Rocio. Rocio, a J2 guy from 2017. Nolan Jones, third base, outfielder. He's on the 40-man roster. Do we see him this year?
Yeah, probably. I am skeptical about what type of batting average we're going to get from Nolan Jones, especially early in his career. There might be a bigger gap between his value in OBP leagues and average leagues than any other top 100 prospect. He runs these crazy high walk rates, and I think he's a pretty safe bet to do kind of like Max Muncy stuff in an OBP league during his prime. But in a batting average league, I mean, he could be a guy that just kind of regularly hits like 235, 240, and you're getting power and you're getting counting stats and all that. But just not a guy that piques my interest in redraft leagues at all, really.
And behind Rocio at 5, Tanner Burns, Isaiah Green, Daniel Espino, Emmanuel Clase, Carson Tucker. You usually don't see relief pitching prospects all that high in your rankings or anybody's prospect rankings, but especially fantasy-driven prospect rankings. But Clase, that stuff, he has future closer written over him. He's had some off-the-field issues, a suspension for PEDs. But do you think Clase could be a dark horse to save games this season?
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of actually grown more skeptical of that. I was listening to the Rotosaurus guys talking about this closer situation, and they're both Cleveland fans. So, I mean, I think they're more plugged in on it than I am. And it sounds like they kind of think it might be Blake Parker.
Wow.
Just
not
as
even
a way
Nick Whitgren, but Blake Parker.
Well, I mean, Blake Parker has saved double-digit saves in 2018, 2019, and Cleveland is just so ridiculously cheap that they might just want to keep Karinchak and Clase's salaries down by not letting them get saves. I mean, any team that's cheap enough to make some of the moves they've made in recent years, like I definitely wouldn't put it past them, and they could still, like, Cleveland is kind of like they're just one of those teams where they're going to win games even if they just do it in a despicable fashion. They could just do all kinds of games to try to keep the prices on these guys down, but they're so valuable that like if you use Karinchak and Clase in a setup role, I mean your bullpen's still going to be awesome.
That's a good point, man. I've moved Karinchak down my board fair ways behind the Rosenthals and the Hands and even like Kirby Yates. Love the skills, but yeah, I'm growing more reluctant to draft him just because of the uncertainty as to whether he will be closing. I mentioned that there were 48 Cleveland players here. Anybody else down the list, or should we move on to the Tigers?
We can move on.
So Spencer Torkelson sounds like he's going to be back in action. He's the number one. No surprise there, is the number one pick in last year's draft. What was it? A finger injury that had him sidelined, slicing his right index finger at home. So nothing very mild. They described it as. This shouldn't cost him much time. No real doubts that he's going to hit.
No, and worth noting, I think he played first base today. So I know there's been some talk about them trying him at third base. I think they're definitely keeping their options open in terms of him being more of a first baseman, which is where I still project him to end up.
And I saw that the Tigers kind of got on Garrett Cole the other day, which early spring, shouldn't read anything into it. But it was good to see that Riley Green had a nice, professional plate appearance against a guy like Garrett Cole. Only 20 years old, and he has not played much above the rookie ball level, only 24 games with a full season affiliate. So a work in progress, but what's the upside with Riley Green?
He's a stud, and I think it's still a decent time to try to trade for him in dynasty leagues. I think if anyone's not valuing him as a top 15 prospect, I think that's a mistake. And I kind of almost think this is trending towards a situation where he's kind of looking big league ready around July-ish, and the Tigers will just keep him down for those final few months to manipulate his service time. And then, I mean, it might be Green, not Torkelson, who we're kind of drafting super high in redraft leagues with the expectation that they're just going to play service time games before he's up. Like, I think Torkelson could be that advanced and that ready as well, but I'm almost more confident Riley Green's going to be big league ready in April of 2022 than I am Torkelson.
Very interesting. Then a trio of starters behind those two: Matt Manning, Casey Mize, Tariq Skubal. Mize, the shine's already off a little bit after he struggled in his debut. It's only 7 starts with a 6.99 ERA and 1.48 WHIP. Any of these guys you're eyeing up as even in those like 50-round draft and holds as viable stashes?
Well, they're all viable in that format. Matt Manning pitched today, and I think I saw on Twitter that his fastball velocity was like 91 to 93, which would be down about 3 or 4 ticks. And he dealt with that elbow thing last year, so just something to keep an eye on. I mean, I hope he's okay. I hope that the velocity kind of shows up, when he gets some more reps here this spring. But just something to keep an eye on with him. I mean, just based on where they're going in drafts, I might not end up with any of them anywhere. But Matt Manning's the one I like most long term.
Very nice. Well, like the White Sox, the Tigers only have 20 players on their list here among the 148 AL Central prospects you need to know. But unlike the White Sox, they're not good at the major league level. So bleak now, and the future's not looking too great. I mean, Torkelson, Green, and those pitchers pretty nice, but you'd think they'd be further along.
Nucleus.
Yeah,
that's you're still kind of only halfway there with those guys, and
they've been rebuilding for like 5 years too. It seems like
it's really pathetic. And of the 20 guys I listed, like a quarter of them were just from this last draft class. So, I mean, their 2019 draft, their 2018 draft, their 2017 draft. I mean, just not a lot to talk about, really. I mean, And even on the international side of things, like Isaac Paredes, I mean, yeah, maybe Willie Castro is an everyday player, but just not an impressive rebuild at all. And they obviously, it's been well documented that the deals they passed on with Michael Fulmer and Matt Boyd and stuff. I mean, it's been a pretty bad rebuild.
Yeah, couldn't they have had like Baez or Carlos Correa for Fulmer?
I think it was Baez or Bregman, maybe.
Yikes, that's not great. Conversely, the Royals, after those back-to-back World Series appearances, their rebuild was pretty swift, and they seem to be in a pretty good spot. When you say not necessarily for this year, but for the early 2020s.
Yeah, I think they're really trending in the right direction, and I think they might surprise people with how competitive they are this year. Back of the lineup is still pretty bad, but top half of the lineup is actually really pretty respectable, and they have just
coming around on Benintendi.
I kind of am.
See it.
I mean, he's a competent big league number 2 hitter, I think.
Against righties, yeah.
He might be more valuable in real life than fantasy, honestly. Because it's just the OBP, and I still wonder about what's the max homers we see from him this year. What's the max stolen bases we see? I don't know if he can even get to 25 homers or 15 steals. So I'm still iffy in that regard, but I think the runs and RBI and batting average should all be pretty solid with him. But it's this pitching they've assembled is just so impressive. In their 2018 draft alone, they got, I think they got Brady Singer plus Lynch plus Cowher plus Jonathan Bolin plus Austin Cox. They just cleaned up in that 2018 draft. And then Bobby Witt, future face of the franchise, was an awesome pick in 2019. It's all really trending up for the Royals.
That's good. I wanted to just ask you about Benintendi because I remember that 360-degree windmill dunk you guys laid down me. You and Dave Potts when I mentioned I was drafting Benintendi. But no, I didn't
lay that dunk. That was all Dave.
We talked about that on the radio though, and I deserved it.
I just liked it. I liked the tweet. I liked the dunk.
No, Dave. I love Dave. I'm just kidding around. But you mentioned this pitching staff they've assembled. Do you think Asa Lacy, lefty, the top choice from the 2020 draft, is part of that mix this season?
No, I think he's at least a 2022 guy. Just really electric, but command. I think it's going to take a year at least for him. So more of a guy for future years, but it's also that they have such a nice problem to have because they need to have an opening for these guys to even get a shot. So Daniel Lynch, Jackson Cowher, they're both pretty much ready, but they're going to need to wait for an opening in that rotation. And then behind them, I think Jonathan Bolin and Austin Cox are probably closer to ready than Asa Lacy as well. So they don't have to rush Lacy at all. They can give him plenty of seasoning in the minors and let him really get everything figured out.
And you referenced Bobby Witt as being future face of the franchise. And a few weeks ago, Rob Silver stopped by unexpectedly to shed some light on Alberto Mondesi, offering a bit of a dissenting opinion. And he said, if this guy steals 60 bases, he may be the worst big league hitter ever to steal 60 bases. So do you think, and Bobby Witt is included on your players we could see in 2021, is there an outside chance that maybe Witt supplants Alberto Mondesi this year?
I would say 0% chance. I think Witt's already been working out at third base, so I think it's pretty clear that Mondesi is an amazing defender at shortstop. Witt's just a pretty good one, so I think you just leave Mondesi at short and you move Witt over to third. And that could be kind of like a Manny Machado type of thing where you move him to third and all of a sudden he's a Gold Glove defender.
Good to know. And finally, the Twins in the AL Central. Alex Kierloff. I hate the analysis that's just this guy can hit. But that's kind of how I feel with Kierloff. He can hit, and he's going to hit at the big league level.
Yeah, it's it's really pretty simple with him for sure. Like I took him in the baseball prospectus prospect mock draft that I'm taking part in again this year, and I had to write up like 3 sentences on him, and it's just kind of like, yeah, I mean, he's just gonna hit. I don't know what else you want me to say. Like he's not, although he has been making more plays in the field, I feel, than I kind of thought he would, but not really gonna run much. He's there to rake, and he's gonna rake.
And you said on our XM show a couple weeks ago that Trevor Larnick is kind of getting, some people kind of see him and Kierloff as being like somewhat equals, but maybe Larnick's just a little bit further ways. But you stress that no, Kierloff is a better player and a better prospect long term.
Yeah, like Larnick probably has more raw power, even though Kierloff, I mean, they both might end up with 70 power, but Larnick definitely has 70 power. It's just Kierloff's going to have at least like a plus hit tool, and Larnick, I think he'd be lucky to get to 50 on the hit tool. And it's just different types of hitters. Kierloff always makes contact at an excellent clip. Larnick has logged high strikeout rates at age-appropriate levels, so it's just different hit tools is kind of the big difference there. And Larnick's even worse defensively. Like he's left field DH only, and Kierloff at least can play right. He can play left. He can play first in a pinch.
Real quick, I just want to shout out Dustin Morris from the Minnesota Twins, communications and player relations, because he's been tweeting out these short videos of people just saying their names, how to properly pronunciate the names. And, Trevor Larnick's a guy that I've probably called Trevor Larnach, Trevor Larnick, all kinds of weird things. So I just want to thank Dustin Morris, and hopefully we can get eventually a database built up just so that we're not mispronouncing these names. I'm sick of it. Sick of doing it myself. But between those two, Royce Lewis sandwiched in. Of course, terrible news. He's going to miss the entire season after a torn ACL. Had surgery last week. So when he plays again in 2022, fingers crossed, it's going to be close to 3 years since he played a professional game and affiliated ball. So how far does he fall on your overall top 400?
I dropped him 20 spots, I think, from 12 to 32. And yeah, it's a huge bummer because this is the type of thing that could really, it could affect his whole career. Like these are valuable developmental reps. That surgery, it's not a 100% thing. It's more kind of in that 82% range, kind of like Tommy John surgery. So, and it's on his plant leg, which is the worst of the two legs if you're going to have it. So it's a bummer. He's on the short list of guys that you hear the most positive comments about in terms of his makeup and his work ethic and all that stuff. So I've talked to him. He's a great guy. Like I have no doubt that he's going to do everything in his power to come back even stronger. But yeah, it's going to be tough, especially when the one thing that was kind of in question was just his hit tool. And so when you miss that much time, it's tough. But if someone wants to push him down like way past where I have him, I think that's a mistake. And that, maybe there's an opportunity here, especially if you're a rebuilding team in a dynasty league. Maybe there's an opportunity here to buy low. Especially if like you can get him for a non-top 50 prospect. I think that's a no-brainer right now. But it's just a huge bummer. It had me down like all day when I saw that news. Like he was one of the guys I would have wished that upon the least. Like just someone that I really thought was going to prove the doubters wrong this year, and we'll have to wait till 2022.
Yeah, those doubters were kind of chirping in after a rough year. At high A? I think it was, or not a great run at Double A either. But yeah, that's too bad that he's not going to be able to bounce back and show what he can do at the upper levels this season. Hopefully, not too far off. When did you talk to him? A couple years ago when you were doing that minor league tour?
AFL in 2019.
Okay. Oh, nice.
He was the MVP of the AFL that year. Played all over the field, looked really good every position he played. Hit like 330 or something like that. Hit
a
for
nice
power.
guy. Not a jerk.
Yeah.
That's good to hear.
Well, I mean, they're all nice. I mean,
Yeah.
except when Welsh talked to Alec Boehm and Boehm big timed him, but no, I'm just kidding.
I didn't know that. That's funny.
But yeah, no, I mean he's a really good guy. But it was really that AFL performance that I was just like, no, this guy's a stud. He's gonna be a stud. Like he's got this leg kick where just the timing mechanism I think was off that year, but he got it kind of all figured out and was, facing. I mean, the pitching in the AFL is not amazing, but better pitching than he was facing at like high A and stuff, and he still was awesome. So I don't really have any doubt in the talent, but this is a lot to come back from, of course.
Yeah, I've never seen in the fall league somebody be like a real jerk to fans or to me. Certainly never has happened. But it's funny how it sticks in your head when you see a player being a nice guy. Like we were sitting next to Gleyber Torres, and he was just chopping it up with some little kid. And I was like, this guy, at 19, 20, whatever he was at the time, just seems like he's got a good head on his shoulders, seems like a nice kid. That's always stuck with me.
You know who didn't seem like the warmest guy or the most engaging guy was Victor Mesa.
Oh, no. There. That should have tipped you off.
I think that was already after I had been wrong about him. Like he had just had he was coming off a horrible year, and you'd think a guy that had those types of expectations coming off of just a terrible, terrible year would want to make up for it in the AFL, but he was just like, no, this is stupid. I don't want to be here.
I know that's the case with a lot of people, but maybe if you're coming off a bad year as he was, maybe you want to show something. A top arm in this Twins system as we wrap things up today, James. Jordan Belazovic. I feel like we've been talking about this guy for a while. He was a 2016 draftee. You have him included on players we could see in 2021. What kind of role will Belazovic fill when he first breaks in?
I think they just have so much rotation depth and they're just kind of where they're at as a team. Like I think if he broke in this year, it would be out of the bullpen. So not a guy that I'm really going after in any kind of redraft league, but I think you break him in out of the bullpen and maybe early next year he slots into that rotation or at least gets a look.
Nice. And then just to round out the top 10 here in this twin system, Ryan Jeffers, Misael Urbina, Keone Cavaco, Aaron Sabato, and John Duran. I saw his pronunciation from Dustin Morris, and I probably just got it wrong, but John Duran. So, and then Matt Cantorino to round out the top 10. Anybody else here you want to just mention? Any tidbits on any of these players?
I've been getting some questions about Urbina, and like, is he going to be like this guy that rises up rankings this year? He might. It's just I saw, I think it might have been Eric Longenhagen at Fangraphs mentioned how maybe he slowed down a little bit, and it's more about the bat now than it is about the speed and the defensive ability. And if he's no longer a plus runner, that kind of hurts his ability to move up. But I've also seen reports that he is still a clear plus runner. So just not sure where he's at physically, where his speed's at. So that's one to watch for early this year.
Nice. Well, James, I know you're taking a little time off this weekend. Well deserved. I hope you enjoy it, man. And looking forward to talking to you again at First Pitch, Florida. I'll not be bugging you on your days off. I will.
Thanks, man. Looking forward to it.
Sounds good. Thank you all for listening, and hope you'll join us again next week on the RotoWire Prospect Podcast.
Please like our video and subscribe to RotoWire. Then go to rotowire.com/pod for a free 10-day trial.